Hi, my name is Ziruk. Today I'll be telling you a little bit about your roles and responsibilities for these next few months. And I will also be giving you a quick walkthrough of our Google Drive. And yeah, so let's get started. Let me share my screen really quickly. All right, so when you start off in the finance and accounting department, you're going to be starting off as a grant manager. So that means you're going to be contacting foundations, you're going to be writing grant applications, answering prompts within those applications. And so once you get to the finance and accounting folder, you're going to be wanting to focus on this folder that you see right here. So that's number 2, grant writing opportunities. And so if you don't have access to this folder, I would recommend reaching out to your director and requesting access for it. So on this folder, you'll also see that there's subfolders on here as well. And so those subfolders involve the other projects and initiatives that we have going on within the finance and accounting department. But for now, we're just going to be focusing on the second folder right here. So let's go ahead and click on that. Within the grant writing opportunities folder, you're going to see two main spreadsheets that our department likes to focus on. That's number 4, the directory of opportunities, and number 5, staff activity tracking. So let's first go over the directory of opportunities. So this spreadsheet is used majorly for choosing the grant that you want to work on. So the first task from here would be trying to find a grant that is within your area that you are interested in working on. So from here, you would go to the second tab of the spreadsheet, which is the tab that our department likes to focus on, which is the 1000 Children's Charity. So let's go there. On this tab, you're going to see that there's this huge list of grant makers, and scrolling towards the right of the spreadsheet, you're going to see that there's a lot of information on each of these grant makers as well, such as how much each of them have in their total assets, where they're located, how much they've funded in the past. So from here, you're going to want to scroll down to a location that is closest to you or within your area. So I'm based in New Jersey. So if you scroll down, you would see that I've already signed off on some of the grant applications that were available in New Jersey. And once I was done with working on those, I started working on the New York ones. And so we just do this just so that our grant managers have a better connection to their grant applications. And so you know much more about the culture of the foundations before even applying to their grant process. So once you've chosen a grant application to work on, you will go to this most left column right here, and then you would add your name next to the grant maker that you chose. And this column is just so that we don't have two grant managers working on the same grant application at the same time, and we know who's working on what for the time being. And so now I'm going to focus on the grant maker column. As you see, some of these grant makers have a underlined name. So we're first going to focus on those ones. Let's take this one, for example. And if you scroll over the name right here, you're going to want to follow the website that the name is taking you to. And this website is going to be a directory of the foundations that are located all the way across the US, all across the US. And most of these grant maker names that are underlined will lead you to a similar directory where you'll see a web page containing the foundation name at the top. You'll see the location of that foundation. You would see the website, their contact information, and a little bit about them. So I would suggest just going over the about section and just reading through who the foundation is, what they do, whether they connect with our mission, and that's going to give you a little bit more insight as to how to approach your grant applications. And I would say that the contact information is pretty significant, since many times grant applications might ask you to contact their grant people before even applying to their process, just in case they need to check for our requirements, whether we're eligible to be applying to their process. And from there, I would also suggest that even if a grant application does not ask you to email them or contact them specifically, I would still suggest to have a contact email on hand, just in case you have a question on the grant application that our team can't answer, and we need to ask a little bit more from the grant people. Um, and to access the actual grant application that you will be working on, you would want to go to the foundation website. So let's go ahead and do that. And so each of these foundation websites are set up differently. Um, so from here, you would be navigating and searching by yourself to see which requirements they have listed for organizations, which grants they have, whether they have any prerequisites that we need before we apply. And fortunately enough for this example, this foundation has a how to apply tab at the top corner. So we're gonna go ahead and click on that and let's see where it takes us. Hopefully it's most connected to a grant. But yeah, so underneath this page, you can see that they have a list of subtopics such as eligibility requirements, priority grants. So this is most likely where they list the grants that they are currently prioritizing. And so the goal here is to find a list of grants that they have that are available to us. And so once you get that list, from there, the main mission would be to pick a grant from that list. So you would want to pick a grant that most relates to our goals and objectives. So the overarching objective for resilience, maybe recapped in one sentence, could be stated as helping grades K through 12 through social emotional learning with helping them through their mental health issues, or just providing them with mental health improvements, you could say. So if you find any grant applications that relates to student mental health, maybe it might be a more specific case, such as a grant application relating to depression, something similar to that. If you find that, that should be good. If you ever have a question on whether or not you should be applying to a grant application, or you're a little bit iffy on applying and choosing a grant application, once again, I would definitely say to reach out either to your director or reach out to John, and they would be more than willing to help you out with your case. So now I'm going to be going back to the directory of opportunities. And in the grant maker column, you're going to see that there's this handful of grant makers that are not underlined. And so in that scenario, you would go to google.com, you would enter the grant maker name along with the words grant applications, and then the time in which you are searching for that grant application. So currently it's the summer of 2021. So I would be writing, take for example, maybe I'm applying to the AT&T Foundation. So I would go to Google, type in AT&T Foundation, grant applications, open summer 2021, something similar to that. Just so that I get directed to a page or a website that gives me a little bit more information that we discussed earlier on here. And I could take wherever I need to go from there to find the grant applications that the grant maker has available. And then these three columns are here for you. And this column is to specify whether or not you thought a grant application was easy or difficult for you. This just gives a little bit insight to your, it lets your director know how you're doing on a grant application, whether you might be having difficulty or maybe you're doing pretty okay. That's what this column is here for. Then this column is here to add the link to the application which you're working on, just so you don't lose it and you have it on hand. And this column is here for any notes that you might have in the application, on the application. So take, for example, in the past, I was working on a grant application and then I realized that it was not open until a later date. So I use the notes column to notify my director that we still have to work on this grant application and that it's not done yet. And once they have the date open, then we start applying to it. So that's basically what the notes column is for. If there's anything urgent, however, you should definitely be reaching out to your director or maybe your team members if they can help you. And so that's a good summary of the directory of opportunities. And now we can go back to the grant writing opportunities folder. And we're going to go on to the next spreadsheet, which is number 5, staff activity tracking. And so this spreadsheet is to use to log in which grant applications you're working on and which ones you've already submitted. So you're going to see that there's 2 charts on here. The first thing that you're going to want to do is scroll down to the first chart and add your name to the list of these grant managers right here. Then to the right of here, you will add the row number of the grant application that you chose to work on. So let me give you an example very quickly. So if you go back to number 4, the directory of opportunities, and I'll use myself as an example. So I started working on the Trell Fund. So I scrolled towards the left of the spreadsheet and wrote down my name next to the Trell Fund. And then I saw that the row number for the Trell Fund was number 85 right there. So the Trell Fund, row number 85. So I went back to staff activity tracking. I added my name, then I added the row number. And then as the months went on and I kept on applying to more applications, I just kept on adding on the row numbers of the other applications that I started working on. Scrolling down, you're going to see that actually, before I move on to that, I would say just use the same process of adding on applications or row numbers of your applications right here, and make sure to add your name as soon as you pick your first grant application. And now I'll be going over the second chart. And this chart is used for writing down which of your grant applications have already been revised and submitted. So you would scroll down here and you would write down your name right here, and then you would fill in the rest of the information, such as the date at which you submitted the grant application, the foundation which you used to find the grant app, the amount of funding that you requested within your application. And these 2 columns will be used for the contact name that you found and the contact email that you found. And then this last column right here would be used for the website or the link to the application, just so once again, everything's in one place. And now we can go back to the folder again. So just to recap, the directory of opportunities is used to choose the grant application you want to work on, and the staff activity tracking spreadsheet is used to write down which grant applications you're currently working on and which you've already submitted. And now I'm going to be going into a little bit about the documents that you should be using to answer the questions on your grant applications. And so that would be number 2, the grant application fact sheet. Number 7, the cover letter for grant proposal. And number 12, the template for VR grant application. So let me first exit out of these other tabs. Okay, great. And let's first go over the grant application fact sheet. So on the fact sheet, I like to call the fact sheet almost like the bread and butter of the grant application process. So I always like to have it open whenever I'm applying to a grant, just so I have something to reference to. So on the top of the sheet, you're going to see some of the technical information that a grant application might ask you of. So that would be the address that we're using, the email that we should be using. That's the email that is highlighted, not this email right here, but the email that's highlighted. And the phone number that you could add to an application, and our EIN number and our public charity status. Although you don't need to know what these terms exactly mean, as long as you have the number for these terms, you should be good to go to enter them on your application. But let me go back to the email for our grant applications very quickly. So that's grants@mylearningtools.org. And this is the group email that our department likes to use for any of our grant applications, so that we all have the information for our grant applications just underneath one email. So we all get updates on which applications are being accepted, which are being denied, where are we within the process of the foundation's grant application process. So that all comes underneath one email. And so you would access this email by using the GoDaddy platform. And in order to do that, I would say to go to Google and Google GoDaddy email, and you would get a link with the website called email.godaddy.com. Excuse me for stuttering a bit there. But from there, you would add the grants@mylearningtools.org email, and you would add the password to that email. Definitely reach out to your director to ask them for the password to the email. And once you do that, you would be able to view all of the emails that have been sent, and it would be set up as any other email account like Gmail, Yahoo, or Hotmail, whatever you use. And so now coming back to the fact sheet, scrolling down, you're going to see that the first half of the fact sheet is taken up by the mission of resilience. So first half goes a little bit into what resilience is, how resilience started, what our goals and objectives are. So I would definitely give this a read over before applying to any grant application, since you might get questions along the lines of, in the past, I've gotten a question as an example. So in the past, I got the question that, how do the values of your organization align with the values of our foundation? And so then I used this sheet right here, and I went back into the mission and read over some of our objectives and tried to see the overlap. So that's what the entire application process is about, just trying to find that connection between us and the foundation, so the foundation is more willing to trust us and more willing to lend us their funding. So scrolling down on the sheet, you're going to see that the second half of the document is taken up by the curriculum outline. And so the curriculum outline covers the program that we teach within the schools that the Selena curriculum is already available in. And so that program is split up under 5 categories. So that's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management, and effective decision making. Scrolling to the next page, you will see that these subtopics, these 5 subtopics underneath our curriculum, are split up under 65 modules that we have available. So once again, I would definitely use the curriculum and read it over to see not only for your grant application questions, but for yourself as well. I think this document gives a really good view on what our program is and what our goals are. So I would say use the rest of the curriculum in case you might ever get the question of what our program teaches or something along the lines of that. You would definitely want to use this document right here. The only thing that I would suggest is staying away from completely copying and pasting the information on this document, and that goes for the other documents on the drive as well. I think that although they are great resources for you, all of these documents, I think that the best way to go about answering questions would be to read the question first, then think about it, then try to answer it by yourself. Then you would come back to these documents and see if you could find any information or anything that you might need to maybe spruce up your answer. Whatever you might need, it would be on here. So definitely use ideas from the document, but try to stay away from the copy paste protocol. But all right, now we can go to number 7. So that's the cover letter for a grant proposal. And so this document would be used in the case that you're ever asked to use a cover letter for a grant application before even applying to or answering any of the questions on the application. So the only things that you would have to change would be the details that are within brackets or parentheses. So that would be the date of the cover letter, the dollar amount that you're asking for from the foundation, um, the area that the grant is located in, and this last bit, which is the relevant location that is closest to the area that the grant is located within. So in order to pick the relevant location, you would there's a comment to the right of this cover letter, which lists all of the current locations that Resilience is already located in and that we already have a program and within schools. So you would find a location that is closest to the foundations area and insert it in right there. Just so, once again, it's all about the connection, just so that the foundation knows that, oh, this organization is trying to help a school within my area. I should be much more willing to help them. I should be much more willing to lend them our funding. So there's the connection again. But I would also suggest that even if you are not asked to include a cover letter within your grant application, you should definitely be using this document through the same purpose that would be you would be using the fact sheet, since the biggest advantage of the cover letter is that it's already been revised and looked over by many people in our department. And so a lot of the verbiage and details used on here can be used within your grant application as well. So you can pick whatever ideas or information that you need from here and also use it on your grant application as well. And so now we're going to be moving on to number 12, which is the template for VR grant application. And so this template goes a little bit more into a current project that we're currently working on. And you would be using this document in the scenario that you were asked for a project proposal within your grant application. And the virtual reality project is something that we have been trying to focus on within our grants, since it is a great justification to the amount of funding that we're asking for. So let me start by explaining what the virtual reality project is. So the basis of the VR initiative is that we're trying to collect enough funding so that we could buy devices for each of the curriculums that we currently have installed in each of the schools that we have. And so these VR devices would let students deal with triggering situations through their own time through VR devices. And then if those triggering situations ever come up in their real life, they would be more accustomed to dealing with those types of situations and would know how to deal with them. And so that's what this document goes a little bit into, but why virtual reality can enhance our program, how it can be very helpful towards the program that we currently have, the curriculum that we currently have. And so once again, I would say that definitely use this document even if you're not asked for a project proposal, just because for the same reasoning as I was mentioning in the cover letter, that it's already been read over, and the VR project is a great way to justify what the amount of funding that we're asking for, since VR devices come at a good cost to the company. And so the foundation people can also understand that. So definitely just try to have these 3 documents open while applying to a grant application, and they can really help you out with answering any questions that you have. And if you still have questions on your application or you're not so sure how to approach a question, once again, reach out to your director or John, and they would be more than willing to help you out. So now we're going to go back to the folder, and I only have a couple of more things to cover. And that is number 11, grant application account information. Number 13, the $10,000 budget. And number 14, the grant editing log. And so let me first exit out of these other documents. And we'll first be going over the grant application account information. And so there's not much to explain on this document. The only thing is that this document is used to add any of the accounts that our grant managers have made in the past. So in the case that you try to access a grant application and the foundation leads you to a website or a platform that in which you have to create an account, you would be using the grants@mylearningtools.org email as your username, and then you would be creating a password that is similar to a password to these passwords right here. And once you've done that, you would scroll down on this document and add on to the list of accounts and write down the foundation name, the username that you created, and the password that you created. And in the scenario that you try to create an account with this username and the website or the platform tells you that you already have an account with this username, then you would come back to this document and see if you can find the account here. And now we can move on to the $10,000 budget. And so this budget is not too complex, but it creates a great justification for the amount that we're asking for, since the more we break down the budget and the amount of funding that we're asking for, the more the foundation would be willing to help us and more willing to trust our company, since they know where their money is going. So if you look at the budget, the virtual reality budget has a total of $10,000, but I would definitely say that you could ask for more as well. The only thing is that we use this total of $10,000 since this is how we've broken down the budget in the past. So for virtual reality devices, each of them costs $300, and we're currently asking for 24 devices, since that would create at least one device for each of the schools that we have. And so 300 times 24 equals 7,200. Then a 10% of that would go to taxes, and we would have 580 for shipping and handling, which stays constant. And then 15% of the total budget would be going to the finance and accounting department, so to everyone who works within the department. And so totaling that out, that would equal $10,000. But as I said before, you are more than welcome to ask for more funding as long as you're able to justify the amount of funding that you are asking for. So take, for example, maybe you find a grant application or a grant maker that has given more funding in the past compared to the other grant makers on the directory. So you might want to up the quantity or up the total budget that you're asking for. So say you want to increase it by 1,000, so make it 11,000. So in order to do that, you would change the number of VR devices. You wouldn't be changing this sheet, but just for your own justification, you would be changing the amount of VR devices by yourself. So say we want to increase by 1,000, we might want to add 3 more VR devices to the budget. So 27 times 300 would equal 8,100, and then 10% of that would be 810. And then adding the 580 and the 1,500, you would get to a total of 10,990. So maybe you would want to add another VR device as well, but that's just the way of how you would justify the amount of funding that you're asking for. And you would be using this spreadsheet in the case that you're asked questions on how much of the budget would be going to equipment. So then you would look underneath the VR devices row, or how much would be going to taxes. Any of those questions, you would be using this budget. And that's a little bit about this spreadsheet. Now we can move over to number 14, which is the grant editing log. And so this spreadsheet is just a better way for us to keep track of all of the revisions for our grant applications. So Our grant managers are amazing. Everyone is so amazing at answering questions and knows exactly how to answer responses and prompts. The only thing is that our department tries to have a couple of more sets of eyes on each of our grant applications, that we can just so that if any set of eyes misses one or two errors, we can get those and polish up our grant applications before sending them through. And so the people who would be checking our grant applications would be Erin, and Erin is our current grant application editor. So that's Erin Vogel. Her email is on here, I believe, is right there. And after Erin checks the grant application, the application would also be checked by the current director. And so our current director is Isabella for the finance and accounting department. So first Erin would check the grant application, then Isabella would check the grant application, and only once both of those people have checked the application, then our grant managers would submit their applications and then write down the date at which they submitted the app. And so let me break down the process of which you need to go about grant revisions. So once you finish a grant application and you type in the last question to your application, before submitting, you should create a Google Doc and then include all of the information on here on the Google Doc. So that would be the application questions, the answers that you have to those questions, and any guidelines or instructions you were asked to follow for that specific grant. And once you've created that Google Doc, you would be emailing it to the grant application editor. So that's Erin currently. And then you would also be CCing your department director. So hopefully in the future, Isabella might add her email right here, but we just do that just so that all of our grant managers have the emails of both of our editors and directors on the same sheet, so there's no confusion. And so once you've emailed the grant editor and CC'd your director, you would be coming back to this spreadsheet and you would fill in all of these columns. So you would add your name to this list of grant managers, then you would add a link to the Google Doc that you created, you would add the application link to the grant, and then underneath this column, you would be adding any of the questions or comments that you might have on your application. Say that maybe you want a grammar check for one of your questions or prompts, then you would add that underneath here, or any other of the questions that you might have, you would add underneath here. And then under this column, you would add the date at which the application is due. And then these next two columns are just for the grant editor and the director of the department. And so both would just write down comments that they might have for the grant application. And once the grant application is good to go, they might write a comment, as Erin has written here, like ready to submit or something similar to that. And only once you've gotten the green light on both of these columns, you can submit the grant application and write down the date at which it was submitted. And that pretty much covers the last spreadsheet on the folder. And I think that covers the folder overall as well. The only other forms that you might need would be number 9, which is our organization's W-9, and number 10, which is our IRS letter. And so these two documents cover some of the tax information that our department might sometimes need on grant applications. So in the past, I've been asked about a section in which our taxes are exempt under, something similar to that question. So I had to go underneath both of these forms and check on if I could find my answer there. So I believe it was on this form that the section was section 501c3. And so just like that, I found my answer on here. So definitely use these two documents in case you get any questions on about taxes. If you can't find the answer to your question on either of these documents, then definitely reach out to John since he knows most about the tax information. And that wraps up the finance and accounting folder. So in case you have any questions on the folder, reach out to your director and ask them how to, they will guide you on from there. And also reach out to your director to ask them to add you to the email chain. And I think that is all. So that is all for me. Thank you so much for watching. And I hope this helped you with your initiation into the finance and accounting department. Thanks.